Sorry, we got disconnected there. I don't know what happened for a small moment. Okay, so we were talking about we are back to the section here. So we did the CH, we did the SS, we did the SH, and we did the we're going on to the O. Okay, so the most important, if you look at the 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 O section, it would be go, for example, would be a very common verb that you would use quite often in the English language, and actually it represents one of the most used verbs in the English language. So it's extremely important to really get this down and to make sure that you're studying these important verbs. But here, for example, if it ends with an O, you're going to add an ES, okay? And that's what makes the exception. So instead of saying GOS, you have to make sure that it's GOES. For example, he goes to school every day. Okay. Then we go on to the last one here, which is an X. Okay, so let's go back to she. Okay. She boxes. Okay, so box. So it's a verb that ends with an X. So box would be, for example, boxing. The sport. So two people fighting each other with boxing gloves. So she boxes on Thursday evenings. Okay, so again, ends with an X. So if it ends with an X, it's not BOXS in the third person. It's going to be BOX ES in the third person. Okay. So the example that you could use, you could put any one of these. You could say he watches the children on the weekend. You could say she passes her exams every year. Sorry about that, small mistake. It washes its ears every day. He goes to school every day, and she boxes on Thursday evenings. Okay. So let's move on. So make sure that you're filling in these things here. So that's your job to make sure that you're listening to see what you were able to put here. And I will be checking to see what you put down. Okay, so here this is a vowel plus Y. Okay, so in this case, you just add an S again. Okay, so it's really not an exception. But for example, let's look at example. We'll say example C. Okay, so um, we'll use the verb to stay. So stay in your seat, for example. Okay, so let's say we'll go with he here. So he stays in his seat during the entire class. Okay, so again, the verb is to stay, ends with a vowel, so A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, and a Y. Okay, so stays this, and you're just going to simply put an S here. Highlight this, and this is what you can use as your example. Okay, good. Then we go down to our final one here. So we have it said when consonants when verbs end in consonant plus Y, then we change Y for an I. Okay, we'll just maybe do a small I here so it's more clear. And you add ES. Now let's look at an example. This is something that we should be doing quite often. We are at school, so it is important. So example D. Okay, so example D would be, we'll use the verb to study. Okay, so she studies on a regular basis. Okay, so she studies regularly. Now, here the verb is normally studies. So normally the normal verb, the infinitive, would be STUDY. But in this case, like we said in the rules here, okay, you're going to change the Y for an I, which we did here, okay? And then you're going to add an ES. Okay, so just like this. Okay, and other examples. There are many examples of verbs that end in a consonant and a y. Okay, so make sure that you're going ahead and you're marking down the examples or the examples that we used here. So just to kind of do one last thing here. So the example A, we said he lives in Montreal. Example B, we said he watches the children on the weekend. Example C, he stays in his seat during the entire class. And example D, she studies on a regular basis. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and move on to part 3. Okay, this part, what we're going to do, I'm going to let you work on the infirmative. Okay, so you are going to work on the infirmative based upon what we just learned. However, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the negative and the interrogative so that you know what needs to be done. Okay, we did look at this a little bit before, but let's kind of go back and look at it again. So it's we're looking at the negative. So you here don't work. So don't or do not. Okay, so we could say he. Okay, so doesn't work. Okay, she doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now, what's important to look at here is that you're not going to add, for example, an S here. Okay. You wouldn't say he doesn't works. Okay, because as I've told you before, the conjugation comes here. Okay, so the conjugation is really here that it takes place. Here is just adding the verb, or what we call the infinitive. Okay, so he doesn't work, not he doesn't works, or she doesn't work, not she doesn't works. It doesn't work, not it doesn't works. Okay, and then we go down here and we will say he, she, it. So let's say we don't work. Okay, you don't work. They don't work. Okay, so we've went ahead and we've put you and you because in most other languages there is the formality. So in Spanish, in Italian, in Portuguese, even in Chinese, for example, there is the division between you and you, which is like vous and tu. But in English, it's just not, it's the same thing, but we do put it there because a lot of times students are looking for it. Okay, so the interrogative. So the interrogative we have here, so it's do you work? Okay, so this is a question. Remember, this is asking questions. Does he work? Does she work? Does it work? Do we work? Do you work? Do they work? Okay, and finally, so just before we move on to the short answers, um, just remember again, so it's the same thing. It's not does he works, it's does he work because the conjugation is in the does. So it's the same for he, she, and it. And moving on to the last one here. So usually when you're asking a question like, for example, do you work, we call that a short answer question. So it's really a yes or a no question. So did you finish? Yes. Okay, so it's kind of that. Yes, I finished. So, or do you live in Montreal? Yes, I live in Montreal. Okay, so here's just a kind of going through. Yes, I do. Yes, you do. So just drawing your attention to the fact that we're talking about affirmative. So this is if I say, um, do you work in Montreal? Yes, I do. Okay, so this is the affirmative. Yes, it does. Oops, yes. Oops, sorry, not it, so it'd be yes. She does. Yes, it does. Yes, we do. Yes, you do. Yes, they do. Okay, let's just take a few minutes to copy that down. And then if we're moving on over to the negative here, so do you work in Montreal? No, I don't. Uh, and so on. So no, you don't. No, he doesn't. No, she doesn't. No, it. This one I'm going to let you go. So what do you think it should be here? So it, I'm not going to give you the answer. I'd like you to decide and we'll see if you're able to do it. Okay? No, we don't. No, you. Same thing here. I'm going to let you do this one here. What do you think it should be? And yes, they, and same thing here. I'm going to let you put in the answer yourself. Okay, and then we move on here. And this part I'm going to let you do completely by yourself or in groups. And I will explain this in more detail once we finish getting all of this finished. Okay, so I will go ahead and leave you for there. So this kind of wraps up the first version of grammar rules for the simple present. And again, this will be on my website so that you are able to go on my website and look at it if you need to study or double check, make sure that you have your facts correct. Okay, so have a great day.